Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Oh, it looks like my mic was muted. So hello, everyone. My name is Kendra Mattingly. I am the author of Unhooked, 40 Days to Breaking the Chains of Addiction. And today I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit about myself and how I birthed the creation of the 40-Day Freedom Challenge, which is the process listed in my book. So I was born extrasensory, and so that means that all of my senses are blended, and this really helps me in in my walking life today, because I can use my abilities to help my clients. I'm tuned into I would say, a different frequency than the majority of people. But when I was growing up, it felt more like a disability than an ability. I didn't do well in mainstream schooling, and I always felt like odd and different. And so it wasn't until I broke free in 2015 of trying to do things the way that society has dictated that we're all supposed to do things. And I started going my own way and really listening to my inner guidance. And what happened was, up until this point in 2015, when I felt something, I took a pill, like that's just what I thought you did. And Jesus, or Yeshua ben Joseph, is my primary guide. And because I am extrasensory, I've always seen him because he's in his light body. And I know that might sound odd to some people, but it was August of 2015. And I remember I was like feeling a headache or something, and I went to take an aspirin, and Jesus stood in front of me and pushed it away from my mouth. And at that time I had a roommate, and he just saw this pill come shooting across the room, and he was like, "What is going on?" And then I went to drink some water, and it went spitting out of my mouth. And I didn't know what was happening. It wasn't like Jesus came to me and he was like, "I'm going to take you through 40 days and 40 nights in the desert with me, and I'm going to activate your Kundalini." Like, he didn't tell me these things. Instead, I was just basically put through this process. And so the vibration of my body, I started to shake, and I wasn't able to sleep or eat anything for 40 days and 40 nights. And I thought that I was dying. And at this time, I finally felt like I had this newfound desire to live because I was no longer trying to fit into society's expectations. Hello. And so then this awakening within me happened. And so it was about day, I would say it was probably about day 32. And my roommate had left the house because he was terrified. He didn't know what was happening to me. And I was just like, ugh. I went to the hospital to try to see if the doctors knew what was wrong with me. And they told me that I was pregnant. And there was absolutely, unless it was immaculate conception, there was absolutely no way that I was pregnant. And so I knew of one psychologist that always talked about mindfulness, and he was pretty spiritual, and I thought maybe he can help. And I had just bought a new car, and then the transmission went out on the freeway. Like, everything was telling me, just stop, just go inside, just stop trying to grasp on to all these things around you with all of this stimulus, and just listen to the guidance. And instead, I was trying to fight my way out of it. And every door was being shut as I was trying to go through it. And so I had no way to get across town to go see this counselor. And so I sold a pair of shoes and got a ride across town to go see him. And he had canceled his meeting because somebody had a seizure or something in his class. And I begged the receptionist. I was like, this is the only person I can think that could possibly know what the heck is going on with me. I need to see him. And plus, I had no way to get home. So he finally saw me later that evening. And I'm like going through all of these fears, like I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, my body, I just keep shaking. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Like, what's happening? Am I dying? Like, have you ever seen anybody that's like this? And he was so calm and present, and he didn't really react to me. And then he asked me if I needed to ride home. And so I got into his car, and I remember I was just like spinning. I was like, don't you think that I'm like really close to dying? It's like I've gone like 30 something days and I haven't slept or ate anything, and I don't know why I keep shaking like this. And he said, have you ever thought about just not feeling fear for one day? And I was like, not feeling, what are you talking about? Like, I'm telling you all of these reasons why I should be afraid. I was, yeah, terribly horrified. And he's like, I'm not saying that what's happening in your life isn't something to be afraid of. Like, I'm not saying that your fear isn't valid, but I'm saying, have you ever just thought about suspending your ability to allow fear to enter and feel into it? And I just remember it hitting me like a thought I had never thought before. And he's like, when a fearful thought comes in, just suspend it. Don't feel into it. Don't go into it, and see what happens. And so for the next day, I just was so incredibly mindful about not allowing myself to feel into that fearful thought. When a fearful thought would come in, I would just acknowledge it and then let it go. And then they called me to tell me that that they had found a transmission and they were going to be able to fix my car. I was like, okay, there's something to this. And a couple days later, it was about day 38. I was so tired and I hit my knees and I was just like, God, of myself, I am nothing, but with you, I am all things. Please tell me what I need to do in order to sleep. I just want to go to sleep. And exactly, everybody is trying to meet the outside's expectations. And I heard, float in a bath, an Epsom salt bath, until the thought, with your head underneath water until the thought stopped. And I was just like, take an Epsom salt bath? Like, that's your answer for me? Okay. And so I get into the bathtub, I put my ears underneath the water, and it was about 30 minutes before the thought stopped. And then after that 30 minutes, I just felt this peace of God. And Archangel Michael came and appeared at the foot of the bath. And I think it was because I was so deliriously tired that I didn't think anything was wrong with that. Not that there is anything wrong with that, but I just knew who he was. And he said, "Are you ready?" And without thought, I said yes. And he took out his sword, and with this flash of brilliance, every thought that I had ever thought was answered like that. And then he was gone. And I sat up out of the bath and I was like, oh, why was I freaking out? Like, everything made sense. And I had this newfound clarity. And so I went into the room and I called my aunt, and I was on video chat with her. And I was like, oh my gosh, my Archangel Michael appeared. And I like basically have all the keys to the universe now. Like, I understand everything. And I was talking a mile a minute. And then I see this feminine angel descend from the ceiling. And she starts to walk towards me. And I'm showing my aunt. And I had this recognition of like, that's me. She's me. And then my aunt started to get afraid, and I could hear it in her voice. And then the angel went away. And then I started having physical contractions, and my aunt kept saying, "Are you sure you're not pregnant? Are you sure you're not pregnant?" And then as soon as the contractions stopped, it was like a rebirth. And then I've never been the same since. So that was kind of my first experience with this 40 days and 40 nights. And then the second time around was we were preparing. I had a roommate who helped me in founding Divine Mother Ministry. And we were living together and focusing all of our attention on the ministry. And all of a sudden, we had plans to go to Egypt. And all of a sudden, she just became like, I say she was pretending to be a drug addict and an alcoholic. Like, she was drinking all day long. And it was so like, just, it didn't make any sense. And then I started to have visions of her going to this woman's house and doing some kind of drugs and like overdosing. And I started to like panic, and I called her mom because I didn't know what to do. And her mom got her on the phone, and she was like, Kendra's really worried about you. And I was like, I can help you. Will you let me help you? And she was like, oh yeah, of course. And so up until that point, I mean, I had had a boyfriend that was an addict on and off for like 17 years. And I had never experienced asking someone if I could help them other than, the people that I've worked with. But like somebody I knew personally, like with a personal relationship, and asking them if I could help them get clean and them saying yes. And so that made me so excited. And I asked Jesus, is it possible for us to do this before the trip to Egypt? And he showed me his 40 days in the desert. And how does it feel to have experiences that your average person can't ever have? Well, I don't really see like average people, I think that the experiences that I have experienced in this lifetime have definitely not been easy. And I didn't understand that. But I think that having that spiritual connection has given me strength to walk through some of the darkest moments of my life. So I think that we all choose our parents, we choose the path that we're walking, pre-birth intentions. And so I don't really believe that there's average people and then like special people. We're all holy children of God, and we're all choosing to fulfill certain lessons as we walk. So I asked him if it was possible, and he showed me his 40 days in the desert. And then at that time, I still drank occasionally. So I was like, well, I'm not going to take her through this process and still have alcohol in my house. I'm not going to be a hypocrite. So I threw away all the alcohol in the house, and I was like, I'm going to walk through this with you. And we started with a 3-day water fast, and we started going to every single different kind of meeting. At that time, COVID was still a thing. So there was a lot of like online resources. We were able to get like tele-counseling. We did all of the things. And my intention was I wanted to see what was out there, what was working and what wasn't working. And I took us through every tool in my toolbox that I had learned over the last 12 years. And when we would go to these meetings, we would meet people that had 20 years clean and sober, or 5 months or whatever. And it didn't matter how long a person had clean and sober. It felt like they were on a diet from their favorite food, and they were just like moments away from relapse. And what I was noticing was no one had a shift in their consciousness. They hadn't shifted out of that consciousness of being addicted to something. And a lot of them were still living in, I'm powerless to this addiction and I'm an addict for the rest of my life. Whereas I don't believe that that's true. That's step one, is to admit that your life has become unmanageable and that you need God as your guide. It's to sin is to miss the mark, to not have our focus on God. And that's God of our understanding, to understand that we are all created by something that is higher than us. And so as we're all walking home, when we don't have that center point, we get very lost in this dark world. So that's step one. And then to call in that higher power as your guide, and to know that you can't do it alone. So what I was noticing was everybody was still in step one, and they weren't ascending past that level of consciousness. So I really wanted to uproot, what is addiction, and why does it seem so hard to release it once it has hooked you? And what I found was there was this level of like shame around that consciousness, feeling like you've done something wrong, when there's nothing wrong with any of us. Like, all of us have an addiction to something. And I really, truly feel like the quicker that we can realize what we are addicted to and admit that, we allow for it to no longer have power over us. So, and when that happens, then we can start to uproot why we were needing a coping mechanism or something to soothe us. And so when I looked at how long we had until we went to Egypt, it was exactly 41 days until our flight. And it was beautiful because I got to experience how addiction leaves the body. And if you starve it with a 3-day water fast, then you send your body into autophagy, which creates all new cells. And it allows for the physical addiction to leave the body sooner than they normally say, like around 2 weeks detox. You can shorten that into 3 days. And then it's a mental game after that. It's about really uncovering what is the need for, why do I reach out to this substance, this behavior, this food. And when I took the group through it, which I'll talk about tomorrow, we added a 12-day juice cleanse. And what I saw with the juice cleanse is by day, I don't know, it was probably like day 11 or something, the physical craving, the feeling like you need to eat something leaves. And then eating becomes a choice, and you have freedom in that choice, and you can allow our relationship to food to be nourishing. Yeah, so I feel like that's all I was going to talk about today, but if you guys have any questions, I would love to hear them. Did I write about your experience serve as a therapeutic process? And if so, how? Did writing about your experience? Well, I didn't really write about my experience in the book. The book is about the test group that I led through this process. I do share parts of my journey in the book, but it's not like this book isn't about like my 40-day journey and how I unhooked myself from addiction. It's about what I was taken through personally, and then what I led my friend through, and then what I took over 100 people with different kinds of addiction. I took them all through this 40-day challenge to see if the theory that this really does work to shift the consciousness, if it would work across the board with every different kind of addiction. And what I found was, yes, it does. So everybody that made it to day 40 is still to this day free from their addiction. Breaking free from addiction often involves transforming of mindset. Can you share any shifts in perspective that were pivotal for you? Well, feeling like I needed something outside of myself was really pivotal, or thinking that when something's wrong that we need to take a pill, or like even when we're sick, we're detoxing. And if we just allowed space to listen to the body instead of resisting it, then we would heal a lot quicker. So my mind, my perspective shifted when I finally surrendered and realized that even though I can see Jesus and he walks with me, it doesn't mean that I was focused on God or asking for guidance and listening. So it's very humbling to realize that we're just fragile human beings in these frail little bodies that are going to die one day, and that we are here for a greater purpose. But we only realize that purpose when we surrender our little ego, I am not. Oh, thank you. It's like a freedom toolbox, this book. There's so many different processes, and I need more of this session. Thank you so much. And the fact that I left space so that you can actually write your answers in the book, I love that. And I'm actually starting a 40-day journey with a group on Friday. So if you guys are interested in joining, you can go to unhooked40.online and you'll find my book there. You'll be able to book a call with me to see if we're a good fit for working together. And also there's a guided session that you can record anytime that you're triggered. You know, like when we're triggered, often we keep looping in that pattern instead of really getting to the root of what is triggering us. And so that guided session is something you can listen to and ask yourself the questions that I ask you, and walk yourself through a healing process. This is an inspiring story. It serves as a reminder that no matter the challenge we face, with determination and perseverance, we can overcome any obstacle and achieve our dreams. It's a testament to the power of the human spirit and the incredible power within each of us. That is so true. Thank you so much for saying that. Is there any other questions? Yeah. The power of the human spirit. I want to say that it's the power of the Holy Spirit. And that is what made Yeshua Christ, calling the Spirit of God into us. Did you ever feel guilty that there's a possibility you can develop some empathy for these criminals despite knowing the things that they've done? So I've actually worked with child predators, and I've chose to work with every demographic because ultimately I do believe that every person is a child of God, and that we've all experienced some level of trauma which affects us in different ways. And so one of the first pedophiles that I worked with, what we uncovered was because he was abused as a child, it stopped his brain development, and it made him so he was only physically attracted to children. And he didn't want to act out on those impulses, but it was his nature. It was what he was attracted to. And so what I found was, if we took him through the stages of development and allowed him to get the needs that weren't met in childhood met, and worked on the trauma that happened to him, then he was able to naturally allow for his brain to catch up. And then by the time we were done working together, he was attracted to adults his own age. And so that's a beautiful, it's a beautiful experience to watch. And I think it's easy for us to have empathy when we try to imagine what it would be like to be them. When you can understand why somebody has done something, because people only take malicious actions upon other people or upon themselves when they feel powerless and they feel separated and like nobody cares about them. Like I used to live in a really bad neighborhood where there was a lot of homeless people. And at first I felt afraid in this neighborhood, but then I started bringing them meals and waters and stuff every day. And then they became my friends. And then I felt safer in the neighborhood because these people were watching out for me. And so it's like when we come together as a community, people don't want to harm you. But it's when we put these barriers up and we say, I'm different than them, or I'm afraid of them, or something's wrong with them, and we do this push away energy, that's what creates attack. And so if we can remove those attack thoughts inside of ourselves, then we won't see it manifested in the world around us. Are there red flags that we should be aware of? The red flags are if you've ever experienced sexual abuse in childhood that isn't healed or dealt with. It can manifest in ways of being attracted to a child. And so it's just important to notice anytime that we have trauma that is left suppressed or unhealed. So I believe we are at our 30-minute mark. Does anybody else have any questions? In your experience, how does building a support system contribute to successful recovery, and what role did it play in your own journey? Well, the one thing that works about a 12-step meeting is the community aspect. It is so incredibly important because the only reason why we become addicted to anything is because we are alone in our pain. So finding a support system and creating a community around you, it's absolutely essential. We are an interconnected species. We're a tribal species. We need to have others in order to survive. So it definitely plays an incredible role. And addiction, a lot of the times we hide it or we're ashamed of it. And so the more that we can be open about it and talk about it and allow for the shame to be released, the better chances that we have on actually fully recovering and no longer having that be our identity. Mm. Yeah, I feel like it's important for everybody to just have God of their understanding that they are following, listening to. Okay, so looks like that's going to be a wrap. I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And if you guys want more information, go to unhooked40.online. And I'll see you tomorrow.